and introducing Professor Nasr will be the Dean of Baskin Engineering, Alex Wolf. Alex, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Rafe, for making these events possible. Let's see, and thank you to the audience for turning out, and maybe especially thank you to our friends at Zoom for coming back after an outage, actually a really broad outage, but they knew that we had this lecture tonight, and so they made a special effort to make sure that the people on Zoom land were available. They could come in. We actually have a lot of people on the Zoom tonight, and when we get to the Q&A, I will be getting some assistance in questions coming from the online audience, so please type in your questions. So last month, we had a really great talk presented by Riccardo Sanfelice on building smarter, safer systems to unlock AI's potential for autonomous systems with proven performance. And tonight we're going to hear a different perspective on artificial intelligence that's going on at Baskin Engineering. You'll see this in Magy's presentation tonight, and then in the discussion the conversation that Magy and I have after the presentation. So Magy is a professor, and she's actually the current department chair of the Computational Media Department in the Baskin School of Engineering, where she directs the Game User Interaction and Intelligence Lab right here in Silicon Valley. So Magy and some of her colleagues, PhD students, postdocs, are located upstairs, just up the hall, and maybe after the presentation tonight, you can wander up there and take a look at some of our facilities up there. Magy has recently been named, it's not that recent anymore, but wow, it hasn't been, time flies. But Magy is a University of California presidential chair. There are one per campus, and Magy has the honor of holding the chair in this term, in this period. It's centered on her work on human-centered AI, AI equity, and AI education. And she's using that platform to speak and collaborate with people across the entire campus, engaging with those who are interested in both the technical and social aspects of artificial intelligence. Magy earned her bachelor's degree at the American University in Cairo before moving on to Texas A&M, where she earned an MS and in computer science, and later on to Northwestern, where she earned her PhD, also in computer science. Before coming to Santa Cruz, Magy held faculty positions at Penn State University, Simon Fraser University, and Northeastern University. Her research focuses on developing human-centered AI tools and techniques, in particular for authoring, adapting, personalizing virtual environments. She published the first book on the subject of game analytics called Game Analytics. Called Game Analytics, Maximizing the Value of Player Data. So this was a first attempt to really dig in on the data that are available on how people use games and how people engage with each other through games. Her new book is a textbook called Game Data Science, in which she outlines the standard methods used for data science within game research and industry. Magy's work is internationally known and cited in many communities, including human-computer interaction, graphics computing, effective computing, as well as game research computing, game computing research. So tonight's talk, again, is focused on artificial intelligence and its application in serious games. Magy has been a strong advocate of the adoption of transparent AI techniques arguing that these offer great promise in advancing the design and personalization of AI systems to maximize their social impact. In her talk this evening, Magy will showcase several serious games that she and her lab members have developed. She will show how these games can help engage students in research, methods and concepts, also in parallel programming. Magy will discuss an alternate reality game that she and her team have developed, which is aimed at enhancing students' teamwork and resilience skills. So before I eat into all of Magy's talk, I'll stop here and invite Magy to the podium. Thank you, Magy.
Is this better? Okay, great. So I thought I would start by giving a little bit of background of my background, even though I did my bachelor's in computer science, master's and PhD in computer science. I was very interested in AI from the very beginning when I was doing my bachelor's degree, and then went on to do my master's in Texas A&M. And I decided to spend some time in psychology to understand how human brain works. I did a lot of experiments around the emotional process, the pain and pleasure system at Texas A&M, and then started to build computational models of the affective side, so of affect or emotions. And that's where I started at Texas A&M. And I started to think about how do we use AI for positive impact, specifically enhancing applications of health, learning, and education. So I then started to think about, well, AI by itself would not do it. I want to look at in building environments, so building interactive experiences as a whole. So I looked into, at the time, I played a lot of games, and I used games as a way to connect with my family. My mom plays a lot of games, as well as my brother, and so we thought, okay, well, games may be a good way to kind of connect with AI as a way to look at using that for positive impact, for learning, family connections, and others. So I went on to study my PhD in computer science at Northwestern, but then decided, well, in order for me to think about these experiences, I need to understand how to build these experiences. So I decided psychology doesn't know how to build these experiences, but theater does. So I spent about 3 years in acting. I went into the acting class in the very beginning, and I said, I want to just sit in and see how it works. And my acting professor said, no, this is not how theater works. You really need to be involved because it's all tacit knowledge. So I was involved for the 4 years of acting in Northwestern, and through that, I basically made a pact with her to sit with me every week, have tea, and then think about how do we take all of the tacit knowledge that we are doing, like all of the things that she's teaching us through the class, and build computational models for it. She's not a computer scientist, but she said, yeah, let's try. And that's where we started to build different computational models. So from there, I started to think about how do we build adaptive experiences using AI, so build adaptive systems for lighting design, but inside virtual environments. And I even took that into the theater stage, and we did some adaptive lighting for flamenco performances in Spain. So that's probably a background that not many know, but this is how we're basically connecting a lot of different aspects. It's more interdisciplinary exploration and getting some theories or tacit knowledge from different fields like theater, computer science, film, directing, and putting it into interactive experiences. And from there, I started to build on top of that work around games and shaping it with AI for educational experiences, learning experiences, and other experiences as well. I'm now at UC Santa Cruz, and I have a great lab with a lot of people, and some of them are here and some of them are online, and a whole list of alumni that some of them might be online too. Some of the work that I'm going to be discussing today are also funded by multiple organizations. So I have funding from multiple different aspects, whether it's companies, entertainment, or indie companies, or even DoD companies, or companies that are funded by DoD money. internal funds as well as DoD and foundation funding. So I was going to just introduce several projects and then go a little bit deeper into 3 projects. The first project I wanted to introduce is work that I've done at Simon Fraser, actually, in collaboration with an indie game company, meaning an independent game company called Ignite Play. And the CEO of Ignite Play was very interested in building a health-based application that will teach people about healthy eating and health behavior change in terms of like physical exercise and so forth. At the time, that was 2007, or even a little bit before then, we were thinking, okay, what is the most popular game that out there that a lot of people play that are not necessarily like video games that are like first-person shooter games or other things like that. So we found out that Farmville, if people remember Farmville, was one of the very popular games, especially in the target market that the CEO for that company wanted to target. So we thought, okay, can we build something similar? So we built a game called Spa Play, where you're developing, other than a farm, a spa on an island, and you basically adding in yoga studios and other things that are more healthy. And you're gaining points by doing steps, so you can actually move around, now you do it with an Apple Watch or Fitbit or others. But back then, there was other devices, and then it collects all of that data, gives you virtual point inside the game, and the game also gives you points that you could use in health stores that are partners with the company. So we built that game. It sat there for a long time, and people played, and we did a lot of research on it. There are multiple papers, and we found that people who continuously played the games did have a big impact on their nutrition knowledge, on their healthy behavior, so they started to walk more and ate healthier. So it had a good impact, but not everybody was playing. So we wanted to think about how do we connect the games to many people that may not be prepared to play. But then I moved on, and the company also moved on. And the second project, so this is the first project, and I'm not going to go much in depth in it. The second project and the third project, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth. So the second project is more about how do we build a game and an AI system that will help people learn about parallel programming. I'll talk more about that. And then the third example here is work that was done at Catherine Isbister's lab about building community-based games for wildfire. And we came in as a group to basically look at embedding other techniques to kind of look at how do we measure the learning that's happening, how people are learning together within communities around using these particular games, and how can we augment some more data science or AI on top of it. Then we also, there are 2 other projects that I want to also introduce, and I'm going to go a little bit more on the Resilience Project. So the Resilience Project is a project that was developed to, after COVID has happened, we basically wanted to see how people are coping when they came back to campus. So we wanted to target first-year students coming back to campus and seeing how they are working together, how they are coping with different adversities or aspects that we throw at them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that particular project. And the last project that we're currently working on is looking at how the AI is embedded inside education, and that's kind of a topic that is becoming more and more important now. A lot of people are not sure how to embed AI in education, but they know that it kind of like maybe is already embedded by students using it. So how do we kind of look into that? So we're building tools with instructors. So we're doing some co-design with instructors. And we're looking at also gamifying some of these aspects for engagement purposes. I'm not going to go in depth into these particular projects around AI in education, but you can ask me questions if you want. So out of all these projects, I'm going to start by talking about the education game. And I'm going to start by saying not all these games are actually developed in our lab. So some, as you saw from the Games for Health, it was developed by a company, and we're working with the company either to help them with the design or to help them adding in the underlying layer for analytics to see how people are doing. This is the same here. So this particular project was, the goal for the project was to teach parallel programming. Now, most of the time when people come into computing, they are taught how to build a sequence of instructions and have a computer basically process that. So now we want to have them think about, well, if you look at all the social media and all of the applications that you have, a lot of them are running on the background and running almost at the same time. How do you build applications like that where you have all these different processes running or programs running in the background? We are collaborating with Tyler, who's a professor here at UC Santa Cruz in the computer science department, as well as a learning scientist from UCF, Roger Azevedo. And the game itself was developed by a team in Drexel, headed by Jishen. So the game was developed, I guess the game was developed, and then we did several studies on it and so forth. So there were 3 grants that are looking at different aspects of the project as a whole. So the metaphor for the things are running in parallel is like, you can think about it as trains and tracks, where the tracks might overlap, or maybe the tracks don't overlap. And if they do overlap, you might want to figure out which train will go first, so you want to synchronize them. So if you have multiple programs on your computer running in parallel, you might want to do the same thing because they might overwrite each other and so forth. So you need to synchronize them. It gets very complicated, as you see here, when you have many, many different programs rather than just like 2 trains on the track. So so Drexel built that in the beginning, and then used it in the classroom within parallel programming. And they found out that people who were trained to think in terms of sequence was very hard for them to move on to think in parallel. They got stuck with the game, they got frustrated and left. And some that were able to move their thinking process were happy with the game. So the question was, how do we get people to think differently? And so what we decided to do is basically use a data science approach, meaning that there are many people that are going to be playing the game or this particular level of the game and have many different solutions. You're getting stuck. Can we show you what other people have done so that you can get unstuck and reflect on your own solution and then other people's solution? So we started to think about that as a metaphor of like looking at what other people are doing and how do we present that in front of a player. So this is an example of where you're playing this game and then all of a sudden you got stuck, so you can click on that community button and it will show you a video of somebody who has done the same problem but differently. So that way you start to think about, okay, if I do this and do that, maybe I'll do, if I think about this in a different way, maybe I'll have a different solution. Then after you play, you can also get another visualization where basically each one of these is steps that you've taken. The green ones are accurate ones, the red ones are inaccurate. So you know that you did something inaccurate, and then you can click on that plus sign and it will tell you what other people have done and how they've done it differently. You'll get a video of exactly how they did that differently. You also might have recommended moves from the AI, so the AI could basically say, this is inaccurate or maybe could be optimal, and then here is what other people have done, see that solution, that solution. There's a whole like data science, data processing side underneath to kind of figure out which ones from like hundreds of people that played should I show you that are similar in the way that you're thinking. And what steps should I recommend so that you can see it. Then our partners at UCF basically started to test that to look at how do they, is it enhancing learning? Is it enhancing how people are thinking? So they are running experiments, they're still running experiments till now. So they're running it with the visualization system on top and without. So far, they've run only 12 participants, but you can see that people with the visualization have completed all of the levels that are more complicated, while others have not. And also, when we test them about the subject in the beginning, before playing, and then after playing, we see knowledge gain for the people with the visualization than without. The goal is to reach 100 participants. This is a long study. It takes about an hour or two. They put eye tracking, so they see where exactly they are looking. They are also doing think aloud, so that they can see how they are thinking. So it's not just the numbers that you see here. We have a lot more data from there. So the takeaways here is that reflection became very important. So it's not just enough to put a game out there. It's important for the game to be out there, but have people to think about and reflect on the actions, the decisions they are making, and how that can transfer to something else outside of the game. And so we showed that by including data science and visualization, so the AI elements, into the game, we're able to have them start reflecting on their process and maybe learning. The next project I'm going to introduce is the Wildfire project. So this is a big project, and games is only a part of it. So this is a collaboration with UC Berkeley, the civil engineering group, and also with Catherine's lab at UC Santa Cruz. So the idea for the game side of it is to basically look at how do we build resilience by building these games that build awareness about wildfire, and then put it inside the community and then see how people are learning together. So the games that was developed by MJ, who is a student in Catherine's lab, they've built basically several types of games. For example, I'm not going to show all the video here. I'm just going to show you some snapshots. So you have, for example, a game about evacuation where you have multiple fires happening inside an area. You have a game here that is basically about hardening your house, and how would you harden your house to prepare for wildfire. And then a game about what items would you get from your home if a wildfire is happening and you have to evacuate. And so with all of these different mini games that they have been developing, we have started to think about, so if we have several people playing the game, how are they learning together? What new knowledge are they sharing? Are they learning anything from it? So we did some studies, and the studies are showing that there is a learning gain. And interestingly, confidence does not move. Like if you see here, this is the confidence part. And the idea here is that maybe now that you know that hardening the house is so hard, you actually lose confidence rather than gain confidence. We're not sure. We're digging into the data to kind of see how that kind of transfer. Maybe we can different ways to kind of increase self-efficacy. We also did some kind of analysis on how they are, the discourse analysis of what they are saying to each other while they're playing and also after they play. And we found that there is a lot of strategic decisions that are happening. They are thinking about, well, what items should I collect before I leave? So there's a lot of trade-offs there. There's a lot of social learning and knowledge discovery between the people there. Maybe some have had experience with wildfire events, some have not. And there's a lot of reflection as well. What was interesting here is that we use a lot of analytics to collect the data and do some analysis on the data so that we can look at the transcripts and look at the learning there. But again, the same kind of lesson that we're learning from the other games is it's not enough to have the games out there. There has to be some reflective prompts so that people can learn and maybe also enhance their confidence. So we are building up reflective prompts, and maybe we'll use AI for that. That's where we're going next. So again, the takeaways here, reflection is going to be important, which a lot of learning scientists already say, but the possibility of using analytics as a method with AI to prompt reflection is going to be important. And the last project I'm going to talk about is the resilience project. So this is a game that we actually developed in the lab. It's an alternate reality game, and I'm going to discuss what that means. But I wanted to just say that also this game was done in collaboration with the Interaction Dynamics Lab, Elin's lab. It was funded by James McDonald's Foundation. And the goal for the game was to basically measure and see ways of intervening to increase resilience. We know after COVID, the people came back to school, and so we had specifically, we developed this for first-year students coming in, and maybe they are trying for the first time after several years to basically work together, play together, and be in person together. So we built this game with the idea that it's not a game that you sit and play, it's a game that you play while you are in the environment. So it sits on a phone, and it uses the same kind of technology that you use to communicate with other people. And in this case, we're using Discord. And we know that all of first-year students are actually using Discord for communication, for classes, and for others. The game has a narrative, and the narrative is basically based on UC Santa Cruz, and I'm going to show you a trailer of that. And the game kind of spans about 3 weeks or so. So it's not like a session you play and then stop. There is a narrative that unfolds over time. And they go around campus and they collect different things. So there's a lot of clues that are hidden inside campus that we hid them. And they have to find them, and then all of the clues are basically QR codes, so they have to scan them, and then when they scan them, they get the next narrative and a clue for solving a puzzle. And I'm going to show you a trailer of that, and for that I need the sound.
The university is being called upon to educate previously unimagined numbers of students, to respond to the expanding claims of national service, to merge its activities with industry as never before.
This university is not what you think it is.
In politics, there something was happening. They had already organized some little dinky, student activist group on campus that was starting to experiment with actually doing things.
Characteristic of this transformation is the growth of the knowledge industry.
Okay, so that was a trailer for the game, and I want to thank all of the people who worked on it here and online. So there is a lot of processing of the data that happened with the game, and there was also AI embedded inside the story. So the alternate reality game is a game that you play on Discord, on the phone. So there's a lot of data coming in, mobile data, as well as Discord or chat data that they are chatting together to solve the different puzzles. We're getting all of this data, of course, de-identified with just their username, and then we're cleaning it, labeling it, and we're really looking for team processes, emotion regulation or emotion reactions, And the emotional regulation is going to be important because we're looking at resilience, right? So how do they adapt? And then we're visualizing it in real time so that we can see how things are happening. And we are looking at action for how do we engage with the community or how they're engaging with the community. And then how do we increase engagement? Some groups might face different puzzles at different time, may run through the puzzles, may get stuck. So can we fix these issues and how can we give them more hints on how to fix these problems? And so if you think about it, the visualizations are kind of like of their process. It's similar to what this looks like, which is basically they got this clue. So there was positive encouragement. They encouraged each other, which is great because then they had good motivation for each other. That helps with the emotional regulation process that we're looking at. They here found a clue, and then they were very confused, and then they got stuck. And when they got stuck for many hours here, we found out that actually they couldn't find the clue. And that's because somebody actually has taken the clue. The security officer decided that the clues do not really belong in the university, so they basically took it out. So we then decided, I told my students, just put the clues there with Alex's name on it. And that trick worked, so that didn't really move the clues anymore. But through that process, we were able to look at different processes that has happened, like team-based processes. Like there is a lot of interpersonal emotional regulation that has happened there. We saw encouragement as one. There was distraction that happened a lot as well. There's a lot of coordination. So there's a group of 3 people basically solving one puzzle. One of them had a class, and so they told the other one, you go to the library, get the next clue. I'm going to just go to the class, and then we can connect afterwards. So there was a lot of these coordination that were happening. And we were able to look at task performance. How well did they do? Where did they get stuck? And how do we help them through all of the confusion and moments of stress that they were doing? So for that, we used a lot of data processing, data science, and visualization, as you saw, which was important. That experience was great, and I think all of the people, including the designers, were very engaged with the experience. But how do we do that at scale? How do we get at looking at resilience and increasing resilience at scale? We needed to use AI for that, and adaptive AI as well. And this is where we stopped, and we're actually getting more proposals to get more funding for that particular project to continue the work that we're doing. And so I'll stop here because I was told to stop at 20 minutes, but I think I went over. And I'm going to get back to that vision and also thank all of my students and alumni and funders. Okay. Should I?
No, yeah, you can take that, sure, if you do. Yeah, and then have a seat.
Okay.
I'll take my pen. Okay, well, thank you, Magy. There's so many questions that this generates, but one I would like to just start out with, since you're in some sense you're studying how people are thinking and what their emotions are and how they react to things. I'm just wondering, have you got any insight as to why some people play games and why some people don't? What is it that makes someone interested in playing games? And I'll just put in parentheses in there, because I don't play games and I have no interest in playing games.
No games at all?
No games.
Really?
I'm a serious guy.
Not even chess?
Not even chess.
Oh, interesting.
It is. You should study me.
Yeah. I guess one of my students have actually looked into like personality types and interesting games, and she found that there is a link between personalities and game interest. But there's also probably, I mean, I grew up with playing with my brother. I wasn't interested in the games, but my brother was, and because we wanted to still be connected, we played. My mom got into it because she also wanted to be connected with us, so we all played. There's a lot of social types of games that you play in parties, right? So these are also games that connect other people. So I think there's a lot of different types of games, and you could think about like motivation is going to be mostly social, more than anything else. But there are people who play because of the cognitive aspect, because of like chess is a great example of that.
So there's an aspect of it that's about collaboration and socializing and interacting, but there's also an aspect of it that's about personalization and the individual. So can you talk a little bit more about how AI can perhaps dig into the personalization part or make a game more personal?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think so we have a lot of individual games like the Parallel, the game about parallel programming is an individual game. For that, I think adaptive learning how you're thinking about things so that you can think better would be important. And so looking at AI, like data science and AI systems for that would be good. But I think now we're looking at social learning, so learning together. And so we're moving beyond the individual. And for that, I think the adaptive is going to be a little bit different than just personalization to the person. It will be looking at the group. And how do we build systems that can personalize to a group rather than just to one, which I think is going to be an important aspect, because I think the social component is going to be really important as we look into like learning systems or even health-based systems. I don't think the game for health that we talked about was to the individual, personalized to the individual, but we found that the social aspect of it was more important to engage more people in behavior change. And so personalization to the social will be important.
That's interesting, because if I think about the wildfire example, where you have individual homes, but in very many, really in the situation is about the community that's engaged with the wildfire. So I can see where that wildfire game, for example, might help someone understand how to deal with their individual home, but I can also see how the community can do actions that may inhibit or enhance what an individual does in their own home. And your hypothesis is that with artificial intelligence, looking at data collected about how people are interacting with the game, that is going to enable that level of support?
I think if you have data not from just one person, from multiple people, then you get at that social and community level.
So how does this relate to the game industry? I know this is a very present question in your mind, but a lot of this. We know that a lot of these things only become available and popular and used and taken up at the scales that you're talking about if there's an industry that can support it, if there's a commercial aspect to it that can support it. How do you think about how this gets into industry?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So a lot of the games that I talked about is more in the serious game front, so games for impact. And that's a whole different industry than the entertainment industry. And there's still entertainment games that have a lot of meaningful learning aspect to them, like, for example, Assassin's Creed has built-in an educational component to it. But I also think that the business models for the games for impact or serious game market is very different than the entertainment market. And there are a lot of different distribution platforms that are starting to think about in terms of how do we distribute not just entertainment games, but also games to schools. A Brain Pop, for example, is an example of a platform that was distributing to schools. We actually have an infrastructure grant to NSF to look into how do we build distribution platforms and infrastructure for games for impact that might be a little bit look different than the entertainment game industry.
Great. Questions from the audience?
So I, too, have been experimenting with AI since ChatGPT got released. And yesterday there was they announced that it now has memory, ChatGPT, right? It can remember what it asked you and all this stuff. And it would give you a summary of what you've been doing with it. And in my case, it was 2 years, right? So I was amazed. It spit out this thing about, you're a super duper coder, and you can also sling a surfboard and all this other stuff, right? And knew that I loved the bike ride and golf and all this other stuff. So is that this part of that? I mean, they've got to figure that out, right? Would that be part of the learning process where you can find out more about yourself and what things you'd be inclined to do?
So if you think about it as a reflective mirror to see what you're doing as a way to reflect, that could be a good use of it. That could be an interesting one. Also, if you, we have been doing a lot of social experiments too. So like if you know what, for example, inside a learning game, what other people are doing, and can you then think differently about what you are doing inside the game. Now, it gets a little bit complicated when you get like to private data and other things like that. Of course, I don't know if there is such a thing with ChatGPT now. You're putting all of the data in there, so.
Posted on LinkedIn, the next thing you know, all my buddies are going, hey, I got to try that. What does it think of me? Kind of get an independent evaluation of what you've been doing with it. So I thought it was cool. And it didn't do anything bad, obviously.
In your wildfire awareness game, one of the things that you found that was quite interesting is learning does not necessarily improve self-efficacy. So do you think you can tap into the research done by Albert Bandura on the different ways of improving self-efficacy, and if those findings could be leveraged using AI and other things to kind of create those opportunities or experiences that take things beyond learning, and you sort of develop and start measuring the progress towards self-efficacy?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were actually surprised that we had no reaction with self-efficacy, because usually the precursor to learning was self-efficacy increasement. So that was very interesting. So we are going to definitely dig deeper to kind of see how we can embed other types of research into self-efficacy and increasing that through the game.
I also had a question about the game. So was that a game that you kind of like monitored in real time, or was it sort of like a self-monitoring game? Like, doesn't that run the risk of like negative or positive reinforcement?
Which game are you talking about?
I think the wildfire game, where like the first year students are kind of like run around campus trying to find.
Oh, that's that's the resilience game. So your question is, sorry.
Like, was there external interference, or was it sort of like a self-contained game?
No, there was the whole crew are actually here. We're monitoring everything that was happening in real time, and we're intervening, because one interesting caveat also that a wildfire was happening and they were supposed to evacuate, and they thought, okay, is it part of the game? Or do we really need to evacuate? And so, yeah, I think we told them to evacuate. No, well, because in the game also there is a fire, so they thought it was part of the narrative.
But embedded in that question is something about, these sort of feedback loops that develop. So personalization is one thing, but sort of auguring in on some aspect of yourself just reinforces that aspect. So how does one get out of that loop, particularly in these serious games or in learning games or others? How do you break out from what you're building, almost building your only a spider web around yourself in the game? Does that make sense even? Does that happen?
I feel like the social component will trigger you out of it. Because there are different people are thinking differently, and we didn't have just one designer monitoring; we had several, so they had a long discussion. They had a whole game experience by themselves as well.
So the social component was also interesting, I think, in the parallel programming one, because, of course, what you think about is, I'm just going to get stuck all the time and look at what other people are doing, and then if there's an assignment associated with it, well, I just solve it by interrogating the system to tell me what other people are doing. So how do you navigate that space?
Yeah, we always have a human in the loop. So we always have the instructor that is monitoring what's going on and can interject, and that's always important. This is why it's not like we're not replacing anything. We're going to augment the whole experience with adding the games and AI to it.
So this actually harkens back to the previous talk in which there was discussion of autonomous vehicles and autonomous taxis, where, of course, the secret sauce is that there's actually a bank of people who are watching the taxis and helping the taxis get out of these jams. So they're not fully autonomous systems, and even these games are not fully autonomous in some sense. Aylin, are there questions from? Oh, okay. These are questions from the Zoom.
Yeah, we have a question online from Jonathan, who asks, can you talk about things related to AI, these language models itself acting as a game? I mean, especially, works from people like John Grinder and Richard Bandler, who is from UCSC on this realm.
So AI doing its own game?
Like AI model itself as an interactive partner working in a game.
Interesting. Yeah, so most of the, like for example, the alternate reality game that I was talking about had bots in it. And so they were mostly actually governed by humans. So there's always a human in the loop in case something goes wrong with these agents. But I think there's always, we wanted to move the narrative in a certain direction. So it's always guided by that direction rather than just taking all of the experience in its own way, which we have seen go wrong in multiple games in the past as well.
Is there another question in the Zoom room?
Currently, we're waiting for more questions.
Okay.
Actually, I have a question. I'm taking the Duolingo to learn Spanish, and I did take in-person Spanish before, but I feel like I still prefer the in-person teaching. But my question for you is, do you think the game or the AI tutor or AI teacher will replace the real professor, professor or teachers in the future?
No, I don't think so. All of our work is a human in the loop. And so even the parallel programming, it's a game and we have an AI system embedded in it, but it's embedded inside a classroom where the instructor is also monitoring what's happening. And so it's always augmenting the human rather than replacing the human.
So do you imagine in these sort of learning environments, they're very, in some sense, they're very cold, right? And that's part of what the question is getting at. There's no face to it. There's a thing that's helping you, but there's no, learning, it feels like you say, it's a social thing, but you're not seeing the society. You're not seeing the individuals. You're not seeing the person. you're seeing someone else's solution, but it's anonymous. So, going back to your experience in theater, one would think that that kind of personal interaction, even if it's artificial interaction, would be useful.
Yeah, so the alternate reality game is actually people get together in person with their and chat on Discord also. And the parallel programming is also embedded inside the classroom. So people are in person in the classroom, and then they play, and then they can discuss and connect. The wildfire is in communities, so inside a community where two people are together playing. So I feel like many of these games do not have to be solitary, and the communication doesn't have to happen all mediated, right? It could be in together doing things together, and you have the game in augmented in their real reality.
So in these tutors that are developing, I mean, this is where that educational games industry is going, is sort of the tutor, right? That's what you hear about is, well, you'll have a personalized tutor, your own tutor who will help you through this calculus course. There again, it's not really social, it's a tutor, it's supposed to be one-on-one. Is there a place for avatars or other kinds of I don't want to say physical, but at least representational of some human interaction?
Yeah, one of the projects that I didn't talk about is AI in education, and one of the things that we are looking into is gamification for the AI tutor. So it could be two people playing with working with the AI tutor, or playing a game with the AI tutor where they're taking different roles around the same assignment. That the tutor is working with. So you can think about the tutor augmented in a classroom and how that looks like, and maybe it's a social experience rather than just a solitary tutor experience. There is a room for the solitary one, because sometimes you want to do homeworks at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and that happens, so.
First a comment and then a question. The comment is going back to the discussion about play. There's a really beautiful article Frank Oppenheimer, who founded the Exploratorium, wrote on play. I think you just find it online if you Google play and Frank Oppenheimer. The question, and again, this might be very tangential to your work, but so forgive me. I'm interested in the question of representation in notation and languages, formal languages. It used to be, representation used to be very much central to AI and cognitive science. Maybe it's a little bit out of favor with the ascendance of connectionist models. But is that an area you're interested in finding richer or newer forms of representation? I think, for instance, the examples you presented about the teaching parallel programming, that you can kind of think of that as a visual representation of parallel programming. I also can't help but think that rich notations and representations are really important when you have collaboration between two different parties that are very, very different in some respects. So musical notation as a representation that the composer works with and hands to the musician. So in a similar sense, I think, I'm very interested in better notation or better representation that would foster better machine-human interactions. And again, sorry, that might have nothing to do with your work.
No, this is a great example, because I think a lot of people look at Gen AI, but then there's a lot of discussions about adding symbolic AI into it as well. Maybe for memory, or I have a PhD student also looking at world models so that you can enhance communication between either different agents or an AI and a human. So it's an important part of the evolution of AI, I think.
Yeah, so we have more questions online. One from Professor Barbara Rogoff asking basically how how you figure out what you mean by learning in your research, and also how do you think about collaboration?
Great questions. How long does he have? I have I guess the department that I came from at Northwestern was an AI department, but before then it was a learning science department. So I have a lot of work around learning science. So when we talk about learning and learning gains, there's a whole work around metacognitive elements of learning. So like reflection becomes a part of that process and so forth. So there's a lot of different aspects, and each one of these projects will look at one or more of these aspects. So the health one was looking at knowledge gain in terms of nutrition knowledge, or knowledge gain in terms of what should I do next if I'm changing my behavior. And there is a whole behavior change models as well that we use. So it's hard to answer that question because every project will be looking at different parts of the learning process. And collaboration is similar. It's also, there's a whole field about organizational psychology where they discuss collaboration, coordination, and we borrow a lot from these particular theories.
Is it important, when I think about students coming into games and are interested in games and becoming game designers, and they from some experience that they've had in the past, but they're certainly not knowledgeable, I would imagine, in these particular disciplines that you're talking about, whether it's learning science or collaboration, data science. I mean, it seems like there's a whole raft of things that they need to learn that is outside of just, well, how do I build a game engine? How do I make the graphics look interesting and real? And how do I design sound that makes sense with respect to the game? So, I mean, it sounds like a really daunting task to design a program, an educational program that can teach people how to build these sorts of games. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so so we have a new book coming out on designing serious games, where we interviewed like 25 different companies to understand their process. Exactly that question of like, to build a game around math education, you need to have a math education expert. To build a game around, let's say, statistics, you also have to have a statistics expert, and so forth. So how do you manage that? And they do bring experts into their process. And I think that's going to become important. Building the game itself still needs that understanding of the engagement aspect. I think I borrow a lot from theater because that's the practice that I was at. I built classes on theater in my previous institution, where I basically was teaching design of games because I felt that that's an important element. So there is that engagement aspect too. But building a game is not just one person. It usually is like a big team, and expertise from different fields is going to be important too.
Did you have a question?
Thank you. Very interesting presentation. I'm currently a student at UC Irvine in instructional design, so some of the things about gamification kind of, I could relate to that. I have sort of a comment and I'm trying to formulate a question, if you give me permission. The thing that I'm trying to teach in my instructional design is teaching people how to communicate with real people. So I need to use gamification, but it will be for people to use outside of the game. And the game that you showed with the undergraduates, which is interesting, and I understand undergraduate experience. I went to Northwestern undergraduate and wish we had something like that back then. But there's the danger of everybody's in the game, and they're trying to game the system, and there's a group think, and you even said yourself that there was a fire, but they thought the fire was part of the game. It makes me think of things like the War of the Worlds, where people were listening to the radio and they thought Martians had landed. And so when you try to put the whole system in the game, and then you say, well, we have some people that are watching over it, so it's okay. We can help out the self-driving cars because we can look on with a drone and we can tell them to make a left and avoid the traffic. But, you have places like Facebook, now Meta, where, people kind of diverge. They're playing a game sort of on social media, and then they diverge into, it's sort of like Lord of the Flies, where they go into their little camps of, extremism. And then they say, well, we have a committee of people that are watching it, but we all know that that committee is really ineffective. So I'm just wondering what thought, if there's thoughts about safeguards to use the tools for the positive to educate people, to help out the people that are struggling, to help the students that need some mental health or need some encouragement, but not make it so that it becomes the system. And the thing is like the TV show The Prisoner, where they can't get off the island there, and everything's being watched and it's all prefabricated. So I'm just, like I say, I'm trying to use instructional design to help teach people communication skills for interacting with just regular people and encouraging, because I don't have an interest in keeping them captive. But with these games, they're sort of self-captivating because they're addictive, and people like it, especially young people that are looking for some structure and some sense of belonging. That there's the risk of self-perpetuating entrapment.
Yeah, I'm not sure where is the question, but yeah, it's a good philosophical point. And we're doing research to kind of see what aspects can help in learning. And the tools that we develop can be developed by, we're not a company, right? So the companies can take it however they are going to be taking it. It's hard to basically build a tool and then govern how. I think there is going to need to be a lot more governance around how the tools are used, just like we're doing with AI, right? And I think when I teach human-centered AI, for example, we always talk about the ethical piece, the critical thinking piece, so that people can understand how to use the technology. So that I think there is the society element of it, all the technologies and all of the games that we have been discussing and the AI side. And then there is also how does that apply inside in the companies that are going to take this technology into the future. But I think I'm always embedding it inside the ecosystem, so within the classroom. And so there's always going to be reflective practices that takes you out of that experience and help you think how to communicate better, and reflect better on your processes.
So last question?
We have maybe one more.
All right,
Because you had
two
a hand
questions.
up a couple times. Mine's a little bit step back. I was really excited to hear you talk about the other things you incorporated as you kind of went on this journey, and your integration of even thinking, like, I could go into theater and that could help me design what I'm doing next. And kind of on that broader thing, how do we incorporate more of those multiple thought processes into AI design, into game design, so that we're going beyond just the data that's been collected en masse, that's kind of been more sensationalized than maybe we have in our day-to-day kind of operations? And how you see that in your industry and other people who are teaching this or developing different things, how they're incorporating kind of these different types of thought processes into this, and a different integration of broader and social aspects that we then as a society want to take on.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there are a number of articles about like games and learning that discuss that games by themselves is one piece of the bigger equation. There is a whole, what they call game space, where people are discussing different things, and they can come in from multiple different thoughts or perspectives. And I think this is where the interesting aspects of learning happen, and not in just the game, of the reflections that happen within the community. And hopefully the community is not just a group of people that all think together, like similar to what you were saying, you have a group think. You hopefully will want to integrate people that think differently. And that's been one of my things, I think, in the lab. I've always been saying, oh, you need to look at this, you need to look at that, and these are different fields. And I know that they are different fields. I want them to experience and think a little bit differently.
I had a question, but
Oh, great. Okay, you will have the last question.
Sure. So this was mostly about your last, the resilience game, but I guess it could apply to others as well. I was wondering what the advantages you found and the disadvantages you found were for creating your own and building your own game when you're monitoring all these emotional responses, the resilience, these other metrics you're looking. The advantages and disadvantages of building your own game versus monitoring players playing an already developed game, like a AAA game or one of the many puzzle games that are already in existence.
Like what people learn when they are building their own games, or when?
No, you made a choice to build your own game in order to find these metrics, to monitor the players. What were the advantages you found of doing that, to build your own game for this, rather than monitoring a player who's already playing something else?
So we embedded a lot of different aspects of adjusting the game experience that you couldn't do with just any other game unless it's very open to you to actually adjust. And we chose a narrative that we know that the students are coming in to UC Santa Cruz, so we wanted to choose a narrative that is relevant or related to them. And so we could tune different things differently as we are seeing things moving and changing directions. We couldn't do that if you just use any game off the shelf.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Magy, and I wish you all the best in the future work on this topic.
Thank you, Magy and Alice and Alex, and thank you all for coming tonight. This is our last lecture of this academic year. I look forward to seeing you all in the fall. Pay attention to your email, and we'll let you know what the future lectures will be. Take care, everyone.